Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Well, technically we're at St. Philip and Bourbon, which I think it's worth mentioning. St. Philip and Bourbon is actually considered to be sort of the end or the beginning of Party Bourbon Street, depending on which angle you're actually coming from. And of course, it's noted for Lafitte's Blacksmith shop bar, which is over here to my left. So a little bit about Bourbon Street, by the way. This is what it's mostly known for, is a lot of the partying and revelry and, you know, all that. I mean, that's, you know, something that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But for a good portion of the city's history, Bourbon Street was actually considered to be like high-end real estate. And so a lot of, like, I guess you could say really important people in the city actually lived on Bourbon. It was also known in the 19th century for its opera scene.
We should probably introduce ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, where are manners, you know? I'm Daniel.
Hi, I'm Sandy.
Yeah, we're with Nola, tour guide, and so we're going to be taking you all on a stroll of Bourbon Street today.
So I suppose one thing we should get out in the open is that Bourbon Street wasn't named after the liquor.
Correct. Named after the Bourbon royal family.
Which made me very sad when I found that out in the very beginning of my time here. So right across the street, we do have one of the most famous buildings on Bourbon Street, which is Lafitte's Blacksmith shop. Unfortunately, though, a lot of stuff that they tell you about this particular location just isn't true. You'll hear people tell you this is the oldest building in the French Quarter. That's certainly not true. Then you'll hear people backtrack to say it's the second oldest. It might be, according to Richard Campanella, which is probably the foremost historian of New Orleans, it might be the third oldest, probably constructed around 1798.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, securely in the top 5 somewhere. We're just not really sure exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry to blow everybody's bubble, but it probably didn't have anything to do with pirates.
No.
At all.
One thing to say about it, though, it is in French colonial architecture. And, of course, on March 21st, 1788, New Orleans had the Great Fire, which destroyed a lot of the French architecture of the city. What I always like to say about this one is that this gives you a pretty good indication of what the city looked like before the fire. So this is be a very common style of French colonial architecture. However, with one really big difference, though, is the inlaid brick. Spanish, after the fire, instituted a fire code on the city, so a lot of buildings that either predated the fire or buildings that were built after the fire had to have brick more so than wood, you know, try to prevent future fires. But other than that, I think this building is probably the best we can show you. I'll just say, what did the French Quarter look like before the fire? But as you can see today, though, it being in the top 5 oldest buildings in New Orleans, and it's also a dive bar, does say a lot about who we are as people. Also, if you want a quick drink, you can go with the purple drink, which is a little grape slushy they have in the machine.
Yep.
Yeah. I got to say, from experience, it gets you very lit very quickly and gives you the worst headache the next day.
Yeah, you got to be careful with the Bourbon Street drinks because a lot of these drinks are just basically alcohol with a bunch of sugar in it, and sugar will dehydrate you faster than the alcohol will, but now you've mixed sugar and alcohol, and you're not going to feel good the next day.
And specifically Everclear.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another thing. If you want cherries soaked in Everclear, they typically sell them, I think, 3 for $1, although with inflation, I don't know if it's more than $1 now, but you can just get cherries soaked in Everclear and just eat them. You know, so, you know, it depends on what kind of person you are.
I mean, I kind of like a cherry soaked in Everclear, I'm not going to lie.
Also, if you look over here up against the wall, the Spanish put these tiles up all around the city to kind of give you an idea of what the name of the streets were when Spain owned the city.
So now we're starting to get into the heart of Bourbon slowly. You're still kind of a mixed residential, mixed commercial situation happening right here, but we are approaching like the dividing line where it starts to go almost exclusively commercial.
And then Nola Po' Boys over here, kind of to your left. Another great little place. It's open pretty late. Roast beef po' boy is pretty good, and they also have a pretty good shrimp po' boy, pretty good catfish po' boy, and they do marinate the seafood. So it's a place I enjoy. I've sent many people here before, and they've been pretty satisfied.
Up on the left, we've got the Clover Grill. That has been an establishment in New Orleans for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
It's like a down and dirty little diner. It's open all night long, right?
Yeah, I don't think it actually closes.
And they do their hamburgers under hubcaps. They cook them under hubcaps.
Oh, amazing.
So if you look back across the street at kind of that yellowish building, that is Lafitte's in Exile. And it's named in part for the place that we just saw up the street, which was Lafitte's Blacksmith shop, which used to be an all-inclusive drinking establishment, meaning if you were gay, it was okay if you went in there. And then it changed ownership, and the new people were like, no, we don't want that. We don't want those people here. And so they moved to this location and opened up Lafitte's in Exile.
And that was, I believe, 1927, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fairly early on. And really, this kind of, to me, marks the beginning. Because I know in an earlier video, we were doing some gay history. So this, to me, is the demarcation for hitting the Lavender Line of Bourbon Street, which is the gay section of Bourbon. In the Lavender Line now, and we're outside the Bourbon Pub, which is gay, right across the street from Oz, which is gay. So gay, 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 everything gay.
And then over here on this corner, we're going to pass the other side of it. Right there is actually the Bourbon Orleans Hotel, and this place actually used to be a nunnery.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually it didn't really end up closing until the 1970s. It was actually called the Sisters of the Holy Family. And so really until the modern era in the 1970s, there was a convent on Bourbon. Today it's a luxury hotel that I'd say is rumored to be haunted for a pretty long time now. But of course I always say with the hauntings, it really is up to your judgment.
And that was founded by Henriette DeLille, right? And she's up for canonization. She's not gotten it yet, but she's up for it.
Yeah, she's the Venerable Henriette DeLille now. Yeah, but it is the oldest African-American order of nuns in the history of the United States. Now they're out in New Orleans East in a kind of a facility they built in the 70s. You know, but yeah, and we'll pass it by. And actually, as we get down there, we're going to be passing the bar for the hotel. It's called the Bourbon O Bar. As far as I'm concerned, if you want like a nice place to sit and listen to jazz and have a drink on Bourbon that's not too loud, they actually do call themselves the only nice bar on Bourbon. So we're standing in front of Fritzl's, and you can see, founded in 1969. So it's been here a while.
And it's one of the better places to go hear live music on Bourbon Street. One of the few places to go hear live music on Bourbon Street.
It's true. A lot of Bourbon Street places. I mean, even though jazz, you could say really built this street and built its reputation for music, it's mostly karaoke and cover bands now.
Yeah.
You know, so really kind of, I guess you could say, catering to
drunken karaoke.
Yeah, and really, I'd say this too, catering to the visitor who this is going to be a lot of their New Orleans experience, going to be going up and down Bourbon most of the time when they're here, and a lot of people who don't really, how shall we say, branch out that far.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So I always say that there's different kinds of visitors who come to New Orleans, and the Bourbon Street type is definitely a distinct type. Okay. Yeah. So we can't go through Bourbon without talking about Tropical Isle, and of course it's home of the the originator of the hand grenade drink.
And it's right here on Bourbon and Orleans. And what's in the hand grenade, Daniel?
Well, funny you mentioned that because we don't know. We can't actually tell you because it's a proprietary recipe. It's a proprietary recipe that actually is a pretty closely guarded secret. I mean, I can say this for sure. 2 ingredients are sugar and alcohol. We do know that.
I mean, I think I have a theory. Honest to God, I think it's just a packet of sweet tarts dissolved in alcohol.
Wow. I mean, that's not too far off from the taste, honestly. Also, I mean, I don't know what the going rate for sweet tarts are these days, but it could be economical, you know. But it does give you about the worst hangover. I mean, I know we talked about bad hangovers back there too, but I'd say this might be, I would say, the crown prince of New Orleans hangovers, just to drink hand grenades for the day.
Yeah. You got to hydrate, people.
Please hydrate.
Coconut water, and a lot of the bars will give you shots of pickled juice. Pickled juice is great for rehydrating. Yeah. It has a lot of electrolytes.
I've heard that. I've been going to stores now, and they got pickles in pouches you can just eat, and it like rehydrates you. Yeah, so this is of course Pat O'Brien's that we mentioned earlier, that we said the hurricanes aren't as good as they used to be. As we said, they're mostly just grenadine and alcohol at this point, well, specifically rum. You know.
So how did they come up with the hurricane?
So they always say the story is that it came about during Prohibition.
Right.
And that this place was a speakeasy, which, by the way, speakeasies in New Orleans were not as common because really until 1925 were mostly serving openly in the city. I mean, we really didn't get a crackdown on the city until 1926.
No, we developed an entire new form of tourism here called wet tourism because people knew they could flock here and get drunk during Prohibition.
Right, and one of the big federal regulators was a guy named Izzy Einstein. And,
yes.
And Izzy,
I love Izzy Einstein.
Yeah, he said that he was able to find a drink in New Orleans within minutes of arrival at the bus station.
35 seconds into his cab ride, his cabbie offered him a drink unsolicited.
I said, warms the heart.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah.
This is the famous Pat O'Brien's hurricane.
Yeah. And so, like I said, if you feel like you want to try it at least once in your life, you can. But alternatively, you can also buy the mix in the grocery store and just make it yourself at home. So, you know.
You can take a little bit of New Orleans back with you.
Right. Pick your poison, as they say. Put it next to your beignet box.
Right? Am I crazy?
Yeah. Well,
it is Bourbon and Toulouse.
As usual, the street signs are gone.
Of course.
You know,
I think we're at Bourbon and Toulouse. I think that's where the French Opera House used to be.
Yeah.
So the French Opera House is kind of what transformed Bourbon Street from the residential street into the commercial corridor that we know today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Bourbon and Toulouse.
Oh, yeah, okay. I could have just looked. God help me.
Yeah.
I'm your tour guide.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm your tour guide. I'm not exactly sure where I'm at. You know, so yeah, they say this is the cultural center of the New Orleans Creole society, and that is right to a certain extent. But like a lot of things at the time, you really did have this, I guess you could say, a cross between the high-end opera versus, you know, the middle-class opera versus the poor opera, right?
The hoi polloi?
Yeah, right. And of course, the poor opera, they would always have the NOPD, or New Orleans Police Department, stationed right here at the corner, because when they knew when that opera would let out, they had been drinking the entire time. And operas at that time, I mean, they were hours-long events. So they're sitting there just drinking, and they would come out absolutely hammered into revelry and just spread out through the city, causing complete chaos. You know, so the police department, what their job really was identify possible troublemakers in the crowd and try to get them secured so that we didn't have a bigger situation. You know, which we never think of the opera being that way now.
You don't.
Unfortunately, burned to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really pretty. You can see some photos. We only have a few photos of it, but you could tell it was a pretty magnificent building. So it was a big loss for New Orleans. And they said that people were out here weeping in the streets when it was burning.
Hardest working men on Bourbon Street right here. You know, I mean, if you absolutely need something to eat, then you can always go to the Lucky Dog Man. Of course, it is cash only, and I'll say they do serve a hot dog. You can get it with like mustard, ketchup, chili, no cheese, unfortunately. If it had cheese, I probably would eat it more.
So I don't know if this is true, but I read when I first moved to New Orleans and was kind of becoming acquainted with things like the Lucky Dog, that initially the people that were working it were like people who had been in like academic careers oftentimes that had just dropped out of society and got a and you could have the most stimulating conversation with the Lucky Dog vendor.
No way.
No, I don't know if that's true. I think I only read that in one place, but it was like people with PhDs that were just serving Lucky Dogs on the streets of New Orleans.
And I got to say, that is very New Orleans. I mean, we've had our fair share of literary people come through here, and we've had a fair share of them just give up.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and there's something poetic about that. I don't necessarily think of that as a negative thing.
Well, speaking of literary characters, we did have somebody write about Lucky Dogs in a way.
Of course. John Candy Toole's book, The Confederacy of Dunces. The main character, Ignatius J. Riley, actually became a Lucky Dog vendor in the book. You know, we're actually standing by 500 Bourbon Street, which is, well, today it's called the Concrete Cowboy, but for most of its history, it was the Chris Owens Club. Chris Owens, she was synonymous with, like, you know, how shall we say, the sort of Bourbon Street dancing girl. You know, she had her legs insured at one point. And also, she was also known for hosting an Easter parade. They used to bring people from all over the world, and she was the queen of the parade every single year.
We still have that parade.
Yeah, we still have that parade. You know, so she's left her lasting legacy on New Orleans, but I guess you could easily say that this was really the queen of Bourbon Street, and she really was definitely synonymous with this street, you know.
And wasn't it in the 40s and the 50s that was kind of like the heyday of burlesque on Bourbon Street? So a lot of these bars, rather than being like what they've become today, especially going that way, which are strip clubs, you would have had the art of the tease with burlesque. And there's been kind of, in the modern era, a little bit of a resurgence with burlesque, but nothing like what you would have seen back in the day.
Right, right. Yeah, she unfortunately passed away recently, so she's not with us anymore. But you know, her legacy lives on. But unfortunately, there was a big sign out here used to say Chris Owens on it, and the people who took over the building did take it down. So unfortunately, I think all we'll have now is photographs and memories. So, I mean, I was going to say, that's pretty much our highlights of bourbon. You know, I always tell everybody on my tours, I'm like, you know, you really should kind of visit Bourbon Street, come, you know, really, I don't know, do a vibe check, see what you think, and see how long you stay for.
And you're right, it is good. It is good for people watching.
Oh,
I mean, the people watching opportunities on Bourbon Street are great.
Some of the finest urban safari in the American South.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, even though we want you to see bourbon, we also think you should branch out. And I think that's what's great about tours. Go take a tour, get off Bourbon Street, learn about the city that you're visiting.
NOLA Tour Guide, we actually offer the only pay-what-you-want cocktail tour in the city of New Orleans. So
How does that work?
Well, so you just show up, and what we do is we take you around, we bring you to different bars, and typically on bourbon. And I got to say, personally for me, I tend to like to end my tour on bourbon. I like to kind of leave you in the belly of the beast, so to speak, you know. We talk about some different history of some of the different bars, give y'all a chance to buy some drinks, and then, of course, you pay whatever you feel the tour was worth at the very end. And it is the most social tour we do with NOLA Tour Guide. I mean, I've had a lot of people who have made friends on that tour, people they've hung out with later, and a lot of people who have taken that tour with me have taken it again with me time and time again. If you're traveling solo, the cocktail tour is absolutely ideal. I mean, it's not going to be like you're not going to be in a group where you're just, you know, on your own, by yourself, and, you know, not really talking to anybody. I mean, if you want to try to make some fast friends and you want some people to kind of go drinking with and maybe just make your own stories, I mean, a lot of times that's what solo travel's about. And I'd say a cocktail tour is ideal for that. You know?
So look, I call Bourbon Street on my tours, I call it the great vortex of human suckage. And I tell people that there's only 3 reasons that a local goes to bourbon. 1, we're crossing it. 2, we work there. And 3, you're visiting and we can't talk you out of it. And then we'll take you to bourbon, deposit you, and tell you where we'll be when you're bored. And you will be bored at some point.
Exactly. Yeah, like we were saying before, man, it's only a matter of time before you feel like, okay, I'm over this. It's just the time that it takes depends upon your own personality and, you know, what you call fun.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, I think that's where Bourbon Street pretty much fits in with us now, and for better and worse, it is the most famous street in New Orleans. I think if you ask anybody in the world,
one of the most famous streets in the world.
You say, what's the most famous street in New Orleans? They're going to say, oh yeah, Bourbon Street. You know, but of course, it's so vastly different than the rest of the city in terms of look, atmosphere, everything, that, you know, it's simultaneously not indicative of the experience you have coming to the city, but at the same time, it also is because of the drinking and revelry.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird dichotomy between being definitively New Orleans and not.
Yeah.
You know,